Funding for this podcast is provided in part by the IPM Network through the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture and by various commodity groups through checkoff dollars, including the United Soybean Board, National Corn Growers Association, and Cotton Incorporated.
The I See Dead Plants podcast shares the stories of people and plants, pests and pathogens, and the conflicts among them. Join us as we speak to the folks who attempt to solve complex problems with plants through pest management research. I See Dead Plants is an extension-based podcast created by the Crop Protection Network and the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center and hosted by Ed Zaworski.
Welcome back to the I See Dead Plants podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ed Zaworski. You're listening to part 2 of my interview with Brian Kelley and the Gathering Growth Foundation. Thanks for listening. I kind of wanted to ask you, Brian, I eventually want to get to the point where I know you talked to me about some of the devastation that you've seen because of pests and diseases, but before I get there, I just kind of want to ask you, as you've been going around, maybe do you have one or two stories, some of the really interesting experiences that you've had documenting these trees?
Yeah.
I don't know where you want to go with this, near-death experiences, whatever. I know you... No.
Yeah.
I know.
I think
perhaps I do want you to tell... I know you told a story about an experience you had photographing a bristlecone pine, and I do, if you wouldn't mind telling that story, but if you had any other ones that you wanted to tell, let them rip.
Yeah. The first one I want that for me was just it was just really calming experience, but so exciting, and getting knowledge from, people that have been doing this way longer than me, was in 2021, months before my first kid was born. A group of us went down to North Carolina to the Black River, and we had hired this guy, Captain Charles Robbins, to show us where the oldest tree east of the Mississippi is. And it's a bald cypress tree that's 2,632 years old now.
Yeah.
Oldest tree east of the Mississippi. And for me, as soon as this paper came out by Dr. Staley, I believe of University of Arkansas, he was on the team that found this tree, this grove. I was like, I got to get in there. I got to photograph this, and connect with Captain Charles Robbins. And as we meet up, I can instantly tell, I'm like, this guy's just got stories for days. He used to be a guide in I think in, Montana, basically just taking people out into the mountains. And he's just lived 20 lives, just from all the stories he's telling me. And
sure.
It was also just, he's, I think he's probably late 60s or maybe early 70s. And he's just getting out every day. He's just getting in a canoe, taking people on these trips to experience this ancient forest, just living life. And I think it was one of those also realizations for myself. As you get older, you're like, am I ever going to slow down? And looking at him, I was like, no way. I'm just going to keep getting out there as long as I can. And, we get into the area where the trees are, this whole pocket, and he just half submerged in water because it's in a swamp, half submerged in water, posts up against a bald cypress tree and just sits there in silence for the entire time I'm photographing trees. And it's 2 hours, and he's just doesn't say a word, just enjoys the time. And I just thought, so many times I've gone to trees with people and they're just talking the whole time. And it goes back to the same thing we were, discussing with go to a space and be quiet.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, he's got it down. Cause he's experiencing it on a whole nother level. Cause as soon as you're quiet, you're going to hear and see so much more. So it was just, a reaffirming this thing that I already feel. And, he's way older than I am. And I'm like, he's just tuned in. Also just the experience of getting into this this place that's just for the East Coast, just feels that you don't see it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And also he said something to me that always stuck with me. It's he takes a lot of kids on these trips to go to the swamp, and the kids go, how much longer? Because it's, it's like a 20-mile round trip canoe.
Oh,
And if you're a
wow.
kid,
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
miles is like, that's a long day. And whenever the kids are almost, they're like, they got like 8 more miles left. And the kids go, how much longer? And he would go, well, you see way, way, way down there? See that tree? It's about as far as you can see, right? Kids go, yeah. He's like, you got about 20 more far seas. That's the sickest way to like talk about space and
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I just also imagine it like that's maybe what people used to do back in the day. You'd be so hard to be like, oh, we got 20 miles, because it's like you're just trying to judge that over a landscape. But if you can say, oh yeah, you got 20 more far seas, I'm like, that's so sweet.
That is.
I think just overall, like a memorable trip, nothing bad happened. But it was just something that
Well,
it stuck with me forever. It was just like I was with some of my best friends. My wife that was like 6 months pregnant, God bless her, came with us. And it was just it was an experience. Um, and also it was just cool to like have him reaffirm that he's like, what you're doing is important, keep doing it. I'm glad you're young and doing it, because at the time I was like 33.
mhm.
He's like, you just got to keep doing this. Um, and then I think the other super memorable, life-changing experience was I got the opportunity to do a photo project with Patagonia, the brand, where myself and a friend, Alex Turner, and pro snowboarder Forrest Shear, we kind of got the idea that we wanted to go into the Sierra Nevadas and the White Mountains of California and photograph these ancient trees specific to um, um, we were trying to do white bark pine, but we couldn't get access to any.
Mm.
Bristlecone pine, um, uh, sugar pine, as well as sequoias, and then the other one was, I'm blanking on the name of the species right now. Anyways, we were just trying to document all these ancient species while they're being threatened during the fire seasons, and they're we're losing a lot of these big trees way faster.
Yeah.
And also to pests or invasive species like pine beetle
Mm.
or blister rust. And so I wanted to be able to get out there and document these trees in like this dormant period of really hard to reach time. There's no way that nobody else is going and trying to document these trees during the winter because they're not accessible. There's no roads that lead up to these trees. And so we decided that, a way to pitch it through Patagonia was, well, let's do it all by human power. Let's use skis, snowboarding, splitboarding, snowshoes, and get to these extremely hard to reach places and document them in these historic, 4 to 6 foot snowstorms. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. And we pitched it, and we were like, they were like, yeah, that sounds great. And then I remembered like hanging up from the phone call, and everybody's excited about it. And I'm like, damn, I've never been snowboarding. I gotta like kind of figure this out. I'm going into uncharted territory for myself, and I have plenty of confidence, but confidence and skill are only going to take you so far. And so I remember talking with Forrest, the pro snowboarder, and he's like, we'll figure it out. Like, you'll be fine. And a lot of it, I was doing snowshoeing, but I did a little bit of splitboarding as well. But anyways, we wanted to get into the bristlecone pines of the White Mountain. And the goal was to get to a very specific tree that I had been given coordinates to by, I think his name is Tim Frosnell, who works up in the White Mountains. And he sent me a photo of this tree, and he's like, it's gorgeous, super old bristlecone. You should definitely check it out. And so that was like our mission. And I
Mm.
remember just looking at maps, and all the roads that would get you up there, they're all closed, of course, in the wintertime. So the only way was to like go up this canyon, and most of the canyon you needed four-wheel drive, and it was like completely iced over, and it's this little like box canyon. And so you get in there, and it's like your car, even with like the best four-wheel drive, you're literally like kind of pinballing
Mm.
off the sides of these like edges of the mountain while you're just on pure ice road, and you're just like and I'm like, it's a rental. And uh eventually we get in though, and so then from there the hike up is like 22 miles round trip, and you're climbing, I think it's like 4 or 5,000 feet in elevation.
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, it was and we started it way too late in the day, and I mean, I love it because we just were like, let's just go for it. Um, and so we get our snowshoes on, and we go up, and the whole time you're just sweating because you're just burning so much, and you're going as fast as you can, and you get up, and all of a sudden, like, we're starting to lose daylight. It's in the winter, so the days are way shorter, and we get probably three-quarters of the way up, and at that point we lost daylight, and a snowstorm starts to roll through, and we're like, well, it's like on, like, when you're looking on your GPS on your phone, you're like, it's just that much further. But we kept pushing. We eventually got within like less than a quarter mile of the tree. We're like, okay, we'll make camp here. And we're basically at that point, we're like in the ancient bristlecone pine forest, and we're like, okay, let's start digging out, like, 3 feet of snow so we can get our tent down in the snow for warmth. And Forrest is just going at it, and I was just like kind of waiting because, like, I didn't have that experience yet, and I didn't put on layers fast enough,
Ah,
and my body temp just started plummeting.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it was within like 10 minutes. I was like, oh, my body's like not in a good place. I feel like I'm like
Oof.
shutting down. And so then I just started panicking, and that doesn't help either. And Forrest saw it, and he was just like tent up within minutes at that point. Like, okay, we're done digging. This is going to work. Get the tent up. He starts boiling snow and putting like bouillon cubes in it. And I'm just like chugging chicken broth
Yeah,
water,
yeah, yeah.
and just get into a sleeping bag, take off some of the gear, the wet gear, and get in a sleeping bag. And I just like, it took about almost like a full hour and a half until I felt like my core temp was like getting somewhat back to normal. But I was like, I couldn't eat because I
Mm.
felt like complete shit. And it was also like, I got like, one of the like freeze dried like curries. And I'm like, the smell of the curry was like not helping either. But then the next morning comes, and there was this like 30-minute break in the weather, the snowstorm, and we woke up and barged it to the tree and got the photograph of this ancient bristlecone, and it ended up being on the cover of Patagonia's 50th edition for their magazine. And so it was like, wow, it was all worth it. But at the same time, I'm like, God, I don't know if I'll ever do that again. It's just like putting yourself in that type of danger. It's like, damn, just to photograph a tree. So now I try to scale back, but still going for it just as much, trying to.
I- I'm sure you have a million stories of, or a million cool stories about photographing trees, but that's a pretty good, spectrum for you there. You've got,
Yeah.
a 20 mile paddle and kind of silently observing trees. And then you've got hiking to a mountain in a snowstorm and almost, dying of hypothermia and getting the
Yeah.
shot. So it gives people a good, I think, a good idea of some of the conditions, good or
Yeah.
bad, that you've had to deal with to get some of these shots. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and to me, it's all part of the adventure and worth it. And I think it's also like showing, like, these are the types of conditions that these trees live in historically for 3,000 years.
Do you need to keep up to date on new pests or pests that may be moving into your area? Pest alerts focus on new pests, pathogens, and weeds that are popping up in the North Central region. Check out the North Central IPM Center's Pest Alerts page and stay a step ahead.
You know, you mentioned it being worth it to go through all that to get this shot. Like, it encapsulates the importance of documentation to me too. So, Brian, I wanted to ask you, my next question was going to be, you know, we talked a little bit about some of the pests and diseases that you've encountered over the years with some of these trees. And to me, from my perspective as a plant pathologist, I mean, I think that is possibly, from my perspective, one of the most important reasons to document these trees. I mean, you think historically to like chestnut blight, and there are some great photos of the old chestnut trees with that perspective of people standing next to them and that kind of stuff in black and white that I think are such an important piece of history. But what are some of the pests and diseases that you've encountered over the years of documenting trees?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like for East Coast, you know, just to go to where I'm based out of New York, I mean, there's a number of threats, but as everybody I think that's in the tree world knows, emerald ash borer. On the East Coast, unless you're in high elevation areas, almost all the ash is gone. And so when you look at photos of not only what a forest used to look like, but also these open grown ashes and how there's not any left. I would say like that's one of the cooler parts of when I do find a big ash and it's still alive, I'll usually report it to a DNR, DEC, or whatever, and in hopes that they will go and they'll spray it. Or I think a lot of times, if a landowner is aware of what they have, it's already getting treated if they can afford it, you know. And a lot of times there's certain organizations that will just donate it. They'll donate their time and resources to preserving. Like I believe that the state champion, New Jersey state champion and national champion, white ash gets treated for free. Because it's incredible to know like what that species can grow to be, especially in these open grown areas. But you know, you get areas of the Adirondacks that still have a lot of healthy ash. So it's really cool to go up and document that, because how long is that going to last? You know, how long is the ash? Because, you know, you go to the Catskills, almost all the ash is gone. So then you go a little further north, which it's really only 2-3 hours. So how long until it creeps up in? And then same with Hemlock woolly adelgid. You know, you go through a lot of areas of New York, Pennsylvania, unless a forest is getting treated, getting either the inoculations or they're getting the controlled releases. I can't remember the name of what it is that they're releasing. But
like a biological control, like another insect.
Yeah, like
a
biological control. Yeah. So like I might be going out next week with New York State DEC to an area of the Catskills where myself and another guy, Christopher Nyland of upstate New York, and Dr. Kudish, they had kind of found this area of old growth hemlock. And then I got tipped off about that. And I went up there and I explored it even further to what they were exploring, and ended up finding some record breaking eastern hemlocks for the Northeast. And so we're going to go up there on next week and hopefully get that area evaluated to see how much of that biological control they need to release. And that's a really cool part of gathering growth. I think that is, I want to do more of. I would love to, you know, help identify these places that are of importance, especially when it comes to size or age or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think like Hemlock woolly adelgid, emerald ash borer. I mean, even in certain areas, like the spongy moth is becoming a real problem.
Yeah.
And then we're also starting to get, I think, southern pine beetle. So trying to, you realize that trees are really resilient, but they're also fragile at the same time. Like,
Yeah,
if it's too wet of a summer, I believe it lowers like the natural defense that the tree has against certain funguses.
sure. Stress.
Like yeah, like pine trees need like times of really dry heat.
Hmm.
Um, so that's just, and I'm just like touching this on the surface. I know you probably know way more about this than me, but like, these are just things that I'm picking up and understanding about, why is it that maybe this tree is 400 years old and a pine tree in another area that's just maybe more wet annually is those trees are only getting to this age.
Hmm.
It's just, relation to annual rainfall or weather patterns or whatever.
Sure.
So really cool stuff like that I'm sure you look into with your work.
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of podcasts on some of the, I mean, most heartbreaking and most devastating things that are going on in the tree world. I mean, what comes to mind, and I think you and I talked about a little bit, was the beech leaf disease and beech bark disease
Yep.
that's going on in the, well, northern Midwest and northeastern portions of the United States. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious, Brian, like, do you ever find yourself, I mean, like, I don't want to contribute to your addictive personality, but do you ever find yourself documenting or wanting to document pests or diseases, in the sense that, like, I wonder, like, would giving people exposure to what's happening in some of these situations kind of help to increase awareness? And I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we have a section on our website that talks about emerald ash borer,
Hmm.
and it's more of like it's not a call to action, but it's like more of just like bringing up the awareness that this is a disease, or like an invasive pest that's devastating that population all throughout the Northeast and across the America. And I think that we're just trying to bring it as like, hey, if you come to our website, here's this information about this. If you think you've seen it,
Yeah,
email us. If you've seen a really big ash tree in your area and it isn't dead, let us know. Or even if it's like, honestly, I photograph dead ash all the time.
sure.
I think even if it's a really big forest grown dead ash um, in the Catskills, I photograph it, or other places, but a lot of it's already been taken down, because it's, a threat for insurance purposes or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think like the beech leaf, I think what's really something that I would like to get into is also documenting forests right now at potentially a really pivotal moment. I mean, I think, that again, I think you and I touched on it at Shade Tree. Uh, Everything's perspective. Disease, invasive insects, it's been happening since the beginning of time.
Sure.
Forests are changing constantly. The forest complex, the hierarchy of, you know, uh, the more shade tolerant trees. It's like, even if you were to go back and like look at a forest of the Northeast when the chestnut was around.
Sure.
Once all the chestnut was down, then the oaks came up more, and the forest, that whole structure, the forest structure, is constantly changing. So I think something that I would love to continue to do and maybe expand upon is documenting that
Mm.
right now, almost in preparation or anticipation of like, yeah, it's gonna keep going, and at least we know what it used to look like.
Yes.
The same way that you talk about, and that was like a huge inspiration when I started to see those like old black and white photos of the chestnuts. It was like, whoa, like I'm so glad somebody did that.
Mm.
I wish that same thing was taken into consideration maybe for other species. Like I wish that
Yeah.
I could have seen the giant forest-grown white oaks of the day. I wish that I could have seen the giant hemlocks before the tanning industry, the ancient white pines. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I wish we had that foresight for every species. And so that's kind of what I want to do with Gathering Growth is I just want to document it all.
And I agree. And I think that
Yeah.
is so important. And that is a great way to transition into kind of wrapping up the podcast. I got some fun wrap-up questions for you.
Yeah.
And the first one is, what do you have planned for the future? So, I mean, you've been doing this stuff for a while. What's on the docket for projects you got going on now?
So for the last 6 years, my partner, Eric Danielson, and I, he's a lab technician at Harvard Tree Ring Lab. He and I have been working together for over 6 years, documenting the oldest and largest trees of New York State. And so we're entering our final year of documentation and writing for our first publication. It'll be Gathering Growth Volume 1, New York. And so we're hoping maybe, fingers crossed, we can get our funding for it, for publishing and distribution. So that's kind of like right now where all my energy is going, whether it's getting privately funded or branded funded, branded sponsorship. But that's kind of like where I've been putting a lot of my focus. And then also, once that's done, what's the next state?
Yeah.
And I think also at the same time, just like always looking at other trips that I want to do. There's definitely areas like I really, really want to get, you and I talked about it, like I want to get up to the Tongass, and photograph that. There's so much mixed information about what's going on up there and whether it's gonna get logged, and logistically, even if they open up the roadless rule, is it gonna happen? Does it make sense financially? It doesn't.
Yeah.
But either way, I want to get up there and photograph it. So that's like a dream of mine right now, is I would really love to get up there. And then same goes for Boundary Waters. I'd love to get up into certain areas, and try to photograph some of those big white cedars that are remaining, or super old red pine.
Gotcha. Yeah, I suppose you have no shortage, with the map of all the trees out there and places to visit. There's no shortage of things. It's probably just more of a how do you decide what to do next? So
honestly, yeah, it's actually at times really overwhelming. I was talking with a friend literally yesterday, and he was just talking about with work. He's like, "Oh, I'm so tired. I just want to go on vacation." Yeah. And I'm like, I don't ever really want to go on vacation. I just want to like vacation for me is like working on going on a tree trip.
Yeah.
And then to me, it's like if I was going to like go lay on a beach and have margaritas, I'm like, my brain would be like, no, you need to like get out into the field. Like there's too many trees.
You'd be laying on the beach stressing about your next project, probably, right?
Yeah,
I know.
Pine beetle's really aggressive right now.
So, I was going to ask you, I mean, maybe I'll save this for the very end. I guess my next one that I want to ask you and wrap up, and it sounds kind of cliche when I look at it on paper, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I want to ask you, I mean, like I worked in a diagnostic clinic for a long time, and we would always ask people when they submitted samples to us to take photos, to take a lot of photos, so that we could better assess the situation. And obviously you've got the Gathering Growth Foundation rolling, but I'm just curious if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, man, I need to take more pictures as I'm out exploring places. And obviously they're not going to have your level of expertise, but I'm just curious, what advice would you have for someone that's like, I want to make my own documentation just for my own life, and
Yeah,
I might be visiting some of these trees. And what advice would you give somebody just for like a, hey, I've got an iPhone and I want to take some better pictures? What would you say to them?
100%. I would, yeah, I think first of all, because we all have iPhones now and an iPhone is a great camera, um, we're all photographers. And if you're a photographer, whether you know it or not, you're an archivist.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You're archiving your world. And at one point in time and space, one of those photos you took could be important
Yes.
for whatever reason. You
Yes.
know, I just think that like everybody is an archivist, whether you know it or not. When it comes down to the level of professionalism, that's, there's the varying degrees in that. But I would say for anybody that wants to take it a little bit more serious, even if you don't have the camera equipment, but you got your phone, is create the archive, come up with a file system.
Yeah, yeah.
Your baseline is like, the way I would start it is like, do you live in the United States? Okay. Create a folder that says United States. And then within that is your state. And then from there, you go to a year. And then within that year, you start putting like, oh, I was in Ames, Iowa. I was in Des Moines. I was here. You just start going through everywhere you were and you upload those photos to there. You just basically start to create a library of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as organized as you can make it, the better. Make it super easy. Your file naming,
Mm-hmm.
always start your file naming with, example would be today is March 3rd, 2026. So start it off and go 26, 03, 05, and then you put in whatever the state is, the park you were at, and any other information into that file. So then when you go to your search and you're like, I need to find this, all you have to do is like, oh, I think that was like March 3rd, 2000 or March 5th, 2026. And you just like type that in and then you can instantly get to wherever you need to go.
I I didn't
So
know
yeah,
where you were going to go with that, but I love that because we as a group, as our integrated pest management group here at Iowa State, we have massive archives of photos that are unsorted, untagged, nothing. And we regularly, like once or twice a year, we sit down and we order pizza and we all look at these photos and try and decipher what they are of
yeah,
and sort them out. So if you can start yourself off like that, that's such good
100%.
advice.
I think if that's all it is, it's like, because it's like, I remember, there's a fine line between being a hoarder and an archivist. And all it is it's all organization.
Yeah. Man, my last one for you, Brian, is
Yeah.
it's always a fun one, and I'm really interested for this. I'm really interested for all of them. I don't know why I always say that, but Brian, I like to frame this one up. My mom lives in a townhome in Chicago, right off Lake Michigan, and actually, there's some really impressive trees. I'm always shocked. I mean, they're probably not champion trees by any means, but for being in pretty much downtown Chicago, there's actually some trees that I'm impressed by in that area. But anyway, my question to you is, what do you want somebody like my mom, a member of the public that maybe doesn't look at trees the same way as you or I? What do you want them to know about the Gathering Growth Foundation?
Well, I think the first thing is I just want more. I like, my goal is to just have more people understand what they're looking at. I think to your point, it all comes down to education. I want somebody to be able to go through the archive of what we have and maybe be like, wow, that's a really big tree. And then like look at the next photo and it's the leaf of that tree. And then they could be like, oh, I wonder if that's what my tree is. And then they can go out and they can, try to associate it. Or I want people to be able to have Gathering Growth be like an educational platform. I think also like big trees are the easiest way to get people excited.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you think you have a big tree, I would love Gathering Growth one day to be like the authority to like say, hey, like we'll come out and measure your tree. Send
Sure.
us photos of the tree. What are the coordinates of the tree? Can you do a preliminary tape measure of the base of the tree at 4.5 feet off? And can you send us a photo with you next to it? And can you find a leaf of the tree? I think just like, yeah, get people excited about what they might have. Because I think people love to know that they might have the biggest tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've had people be so excited. I've also had people be really bummed when I've told them that
It
the
wasn't.
state mismeasured their tree.
Oh no.
So their tree's no longer a champion. But I think, yeah, just get people excited about trees. And, when it comes to Gathering Growth, like this is a place where people can come and do that. They can see what they have in their own neighborhood, or
Sure.
go buy at your local appliance store, go buy a tape wrap, one of the flexible ones, like a DBH tape or whatever you want to get, if you want to start to figure out that equation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just want it to be like the jump off to, doesn't have to be your career same way it is with me, but it's just an inspirational platform.
It certainly
That's the biggest thing
inspired
with
me.
Gather Growth.
And I think what I want for the public or for someone like my mom is to just know that it exists. No Gathering Growth exists, and go check it out. So with that, Brian, I like to leave time here at the end for you to make any acknowledgments you want to make any resource, point out any resources, anything like that. You got the floor. Go for it.
Sweet. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Isles for bringing me out to Shade Tree, and then meeting you, Ed, and thanks for bringing me on the podcast. And if anybody wants to learn more about Gathering Growth, you can check us out on Instagram, of course, and it's just at Gathering Growth. And then if you want to see the website, you can go to www.gatheringgrowth.org. Send us photos. I want people to feel free to send us tree submissions. If you go to our website, there's a tree submission form you can fill out, send us photos, coordinates, all the information you have, or my email's on there. You can just email me too. And then be on the lookout for our first book. And if any listeners out there want to get involved, if you're in New York or whatever, and you want to get involved in the book, if you have a big tree, send it over.
What did you may have mentioned this already, but does the book have a title already? Is it a work in progress?
Yeah, so we're keeping the title very, very simple, because we want to, our goal is to have this become a national, somewhat series. We want it to be, so the first one is Gathering Growth Volume 1, New York.
Okay.
Most likely the next one will be Gathering Growth Volume 2, Massachusetts.
Okay.
But if you're a state coordinator, or if you're somebody out there that wants to fund a book and you're based out of California or Iowa, you guys want to be the next book, let's talk.
There you have it, folks.
Because there's no real trajectory. It's just more of a opportunity when it comes up. But yeah, so it's just Volume 1, 2, 3, whatever comes up next.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
With that, folks, I hope you're inspired like I am by this project. Check out Gathering Growth. Check out the photos. Check out the soundscapes. Check out all the stuff that Brian is producing. And with that, folks, I hope you keep listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ed.
I See Dead Plants bridges the gap between plant science research and the impact it has on our daily lives. It is brought to you by the Crop Protection Network and the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center, which are both partially supported by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. For more information on today's topic or other pest management issues, check out our show notes, cropprotectionnetwork.org or ncipmc.org. Remember, this information is for entertainment purposes only. The statements made in this podcast should be interpreted within the limited context of the particular topics being discussed. Contact your state extension program for local information on pest management. For the full non-discrimination statement or for accommodation inquiries, go to cropprotectionnetwork.org/about. Music written and recorded by fellow plant pathologist Sean Toporek. Thank you for listening to I See Dead Plants.